Welcome again to Chairade TV. I'm Iain McNay, and my guest today is Spizz.
Hello.
A man of many guises over the years, of course, probably most famous for his single Where's Captain Kirk, but he did many other things musically and in other areas, and we're going to find out about his career and, probably more important, the man behind what really is Spizz. So, Spizz.
Yeah.
I was checking on the internet earlier, and there really is a degree of controversy, it seems, of when you first went on the stage and performed in Birmingham. You were based in Birmingham, and there seems to be, what seems to come out on top is you borrowed equipment from a band called Model Mania.
Model Mania?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us the story. Is that the right story?
Yes, that is the correct. There was a period of time when Wikipedia had I jumped on stage at a Suzie and the Banshee gig, but that was that was obviously like another thing that had to be corrected on Wikipedia. But I was still at college when punk started, and I knew some girls in the makeup doing hairdressing and makeup course at the college, and I was doing art because I wanted to be a graphic designer, and I went to college, and obviously punk happened. I got influenced by punk, and then there's all these punk gigs were taking place, and the girls happened to have two boyfriends in the band Model Mania who were doing little shows. They got instruments. I'd just had acoustic guitar. I was learning guitar, but I hadn't really got much further than the E chord. And there was this punk festival in Birmingham a month after I saw The Clash, which inspired me that I could do this. I wanted to do this. So that was in July 1977, August the 29th. And then the festival was on July the 27th, and the festival was on the bank holiday, August bank holiday, at the premier touring spot in Birmingham, which was Barbarelles. And it was an all-dayer punk festival, and I knew Model Mania were playing, and I cajoled the promoter to say, look, I'm a local hero, I've got, and it was a big turnout. It was the biggest thing going on after the Clash had just been in town a month earlier. It was they could get 1,000 people in Barbarelles, and it was pretty much at the peak of the afternoon that I got on. I persuaded him to let me on. I borrowed the guitar off Model Mania, followed him straight away, and obviously I had no planned material. I had to improvise the whole show, which in itself endeared me a little bit to the audience, and the audience got behind me as, hang on, this is because during the day there was quite a lot of like third division, not very good punk bands on early in the afternoon. So I actually got them all on my side, and when they tried to throw me off, they did actually throw me off. The audience threw me back on, and I thought, yes, this is what I want.
So when you say you hadn't really got any songs, what did you actually sing then?
Well, I've actually got a recording of it. I played it on my little, I've got a little radio show on Resonance 104.4 FM in London, and I've got it, and I've played it a couple of times in my audio autobiography, and it's 7 minutes long. So that's how long I managed to stay on stage.
Are you on stage 7 minutes?
Well, that's with the people throwing me back on again.
Yeah.
But I couldn't believe they didn't turn the PA off. The PA was on, still on when I was, and you can hear the DJ saying, "All right, Spizz, get back to the bus shelter," and it's theatre in itself, yeah. So I just played the chords and did the bar chord when you change up and down, so I could change a chord, but it was only the E-shaped bar chord, And I just shouted things that came into my head, like television, and I'm bleeding for you, but the plectrum had flown out of my hand, and I was now trashing my own hand. I didn't want to lose the moment. If I started looking around for a plectrum, I would have lost the moment. And so my hands were all shredded from bashing the guitar, because I hadn't been playing guitar long, so I just kept the noise going.
So at that point, did you actually want to be an artist and have a band, or was this just a spontaneous thing at that
like
point?
Many in the punk fraternity, I saw the David Bowie appearance of Mick Ronson and Starman, and I thought, yeah, I like that. This is exciting. This was pop music exciting. I'd heard the song on holiday on the beach, Starman, and I got turned on by the song without any visuals. And then I saw the Top of the Pops appearance with Dave Bowie and Mick Ronson, like many other punk, Boy George, everybody cites it as an influence. But when you got home with the guitar and you played along to Ziggy Stardust or whatever, and you didn't sound any good, because they had the whole studio and all professional musicians, and you're like trying to strum along, And it's when I saw the Clash that I realised I could do it. I could do this. And that's when I decided a month later, I'm going to try my hand at this, come hell or high water.
So at school you liked David Bowie, but
Yeah.
when he stopped touring, apparently you became more of a fan of Mick Ronson.
Well, Mick was then pushed forward by Main Man to do a tour and an album release, Slaughter on 10th Avenue, and he had blonde hair, so I was the first male at school to ever dye his hair and bleach it blonde. And I had to go into a ladies' hairdresser's to get it done because you couldn't. The stuff off the shelf wasn't readily available back then, so you had to go to a ladies' hairdresser's. So there's me, like 15. I was still at school, getting my hair bleached.
You had a bit of front, didn't you?
Yeah, and they loved me, the old ladies in the in the hairdressers, being the only young man in there, still at school. And of course, the PE teacher called me Gloria, and so that stuck for a while. Well, amongst teachers anyway. Back in those days, that would be considered bullying now.
Absolutely. So, and then the whole punk thing started. You mentioned the Clash, and that obviously affected you a lot. And was that at the point you wanted to do something musically yourself?
Well, I'd seen a few other bands. I'd seen the Vibrators, I'd seen the Slits, and then I saw the Clash full on Clash being there at their best, and that's when I got excited by the whole punk thing. And then, on the strength of my terrible but brave, nonetheless, performance, Model Mania were going down to London to play with the Killjoys at the Music Machine, and the DJ of the Barbarelles was managing Model Mania. He said, "Spizz, go down with them and do what you did here." So I did. I got down there, and Bernie Rhodes was
Clash manager.
Was the guy in charge of that night at the Music Machine, because they'd billed it as the Cognoscenti Orchestra, which everyone thought was a clue to saying that the Pistols or the Clash would be playing secretly, because it was difficult then to get the band to be able to play anywhere, the Clash or the Pistols, because of all the council clampdowns and stuff. So he said, "Okay, you can go on, but you have to tell the audience that the Cognoscenti Orchestra is you." So and then you do your stuff. I said, "Oh, okay." So I went, but luckily the Music Machine stage was about 10 feet high back in 1977.
I remember,
And so people would lob in plastic glasses, and I was just nutting them back. And that was spotted by an agent who later became a manager, Dave Woods. And he saw me and he thought it was funny, and he booked me for the Vortex. So the thing just steamrolled on its own without me even trying.
So you didn't really have a plan as such, thing led to another.
Yes, and you just grabbed the chance.
Yeah. And did you have any songs at this stage?
Well, I started to write ideas down, but I was still in the belief that because of my art college, Dada was important to me, and pop.
So it's performance.
Performance rather. The writing down. I thought writing down was that you sold out when you start writing.
Yes.
Down. So then I was working. My dad had said, "Well, now you're not going to college," because I'd given up college because of punk. He said, "You've got to go and get a job, paid something towards upkeep for staying at home." So I got this terrible job packing tools in Tyseley near Birmingham. Pete Petrol, he was not Pete Petrol yet, but he's got a car, and he was my buddy at school. And we had a sort of a little jam band at school before we left school, and we did a concert at the end of term, 1975. So I was really keen on performing, and I said, "Look, I've got this gig in London, the Vortex, so I don't know how I'm going to get there. You've got a car." And went round to his bedsit, and we wrote 4 songs there and then. 6,000 Crazy, 1989. We wrote 4 songs in like an hour. And then we did a cover version of Hey Joe Hendrix, because Pete liked metal and Hendrix. And we did Hang On To Yourself, Bowie cover, because that's like a perfect pop punk song. And so we went down to Vortex and did our stuff.
And how did you go down?
Well, people, we got paid. I actually, because they weren't going to pay us, they just booked us. We weren't going to get paid. And I said, come on, we've got to go back to Birmingham, we've got petrol and sausages to buy on the motorway. So, yeah, I managed to get 20 quid out of Dave Woods. Just about made it home.
So did the songwriting come easy? To write 4 songs in an hour seems pretty extreme, actually.
Well, they weren't very long songs, because obviously that was the idea, that you didn't bore the audiences. Punk songs had to be short and snappy, so very few of them lasted more than 2 minutes. But you would just repeat a chorus twice, and you got over a minute, and then. But when it comes to Captain Kirk, if you want to know how that quickly that.
No, I want to do it sequentially
Okay.
because you got a deal with Rough Trade.
So
for Cold City. So how did that come about?
That came about because Dave Woods was booking Suzie, and he liked us, and we were cheap. One guitar, one singer.
Yeah.
Easy to get on, easy to get off. And so we did a lot of shows with Suzie before the Scream tour, before the album.
So Suzie liked what you were doing, presumably?
Well, the band seemed to like us, yeah. Steve and Suzie and Nils, the manager. So we did this pivotal gig supporting Suzie the Banshees at the Roundhouse on the John Curd Straight Music Sunday afternoons. They used to have big shows every week on Sunday at the Roundhouse. And there was the Shirts, the White Cats, which was now Rat Scabies' new band. We weren't on the poster, but we were on. People thought the Banshees were coming on when we started our intro music. So we had a full crowd in the audience, and then we turned up.
Yeah.
But they'd already canned and booed and spat off the Shirts, who were an American pop band, weren't really a punk band, and the White Cats cut their set short. So then we went on, and there was about 200. It's when the skinhead and punk diverged into two different factions, and so there was a bit of violence and aggression, and we faced the onslaught with my. I've got the recording of it as well, and you can hear my Birmingham accent. It's still much stronger then because I was still living in the Midlands, and I'm telling them where to go, and we won the crowd behind, and the crowd behind thought we were fabulous. And we got back on encore, and that's when John Peel saw us. So we got the John Peel session on the back of that, and it's on the back of that we got the Rough Trade got interested in us.
And did you actually go down to the Rough Trade? Used to be a shop, didn't
Yeah,
you?
with a broken wheel on hanging
so
outside.
you went down there and you walked in and said, "I'm Spizz, I want a record."
Well, no,
deal."
Dave Woods sorted it all out with Jeff Travis, and
Yeah.
it was basically written on the back of an envelope, that sort of handshake deal.
Yeah.
And but back then you couldn't. The BBC were reluctant to let anyone use the recording, so we had to re-record the John Peel session.
Yes.
And then put that on the vinyl. We used Berry Street Studios because it was near to where Dave Woods lived, and he didn't like to wear out his shoes, so it was he liked to keep his shoe leather. And so we recorded in Berry Street Studios, which then Red Crayola started using it, and all those Rough Trade bands started using it, and Raincoats used it, and so we were pioneers of Berry Street Studios, which is, sadly is also gone now.
Yeah. And so Cold City came out and did pretty well, didn't it?
So on the back of 6,000 Crazy came out, and it came out.
It was 6,000
Came
Crazy.
out in time for the Suzie tour, the Scream tour. That was their first album tour, and we did the whole tour. And Nico was meant to be on all the shows, but she wasn't going down very well with the young 17-year-old punks, so they moved her off the tour. We moved up to second place, and to fill the gap, they got in a handful of shows were filled by the Human League, a handful of shows by Cabaret Voltaire, and a couple of shows by a Gang of Four. So that's how I got to meet all that crowd, and that was great fun in the dressing room, and we had a laugh. And so after that, obviously Rough Trade were interested now in the next recording, so we recorded Cold City EP, and that came out just after me and Pete split up because we had a row and we'd fallen out. But we got back together.
So what did you have a row about?
Well, just been fed up with each other and stuff. And
He got fed up with you, did he?
We got fed up with each other. We sort of had a row, and but brothers, we've been from school, a bit like being in Oasis, really. We'd lived in each other's pockets, and just didn't. Something went wrong anyway. I can't remember, but we made up, and we came back into the Spizzenergi later in the year of '79.
Yes. Yeah. And then Palmolive also joined the band, didn't she?
For the shows, the big shows, we thought that Spizzoil would need a little bit more oomph, so we got Palmolive in for the Hammersmith Odeon show and a couple of shows either side.
Yeah.
So she did a few shows with us, yeah.
Yeah, and I also picked up some on the internet that you kind of lived in the house with Steve Severin and Richard Jobson.
Well,
it must have been. Was that later?
When I moved to London, I moved in with my manager Dave Woods' secretary Jan. She had the room with her best mate Ursula. I had the other room, and then Steve became flatless, and so he moved into the living room for a month or so, and then the flat below became available, and Richard Jobson and Severin buddied up, and they moved into, and above us above us, in the room above us, the bass player, Laffy, Simon Laffy, of Girls' School. So we had Girls' School and his roadie.
Right.
There was me in the middle, and then in the basement, Steve Severin and Jobson.
Yeah.
It's like the what's it called, that TV comedy
Young
sitcom?
Ones.
Young Ones. It's like the Young Ones of West London, yeah.
Yeah, sort of punk young ones.
We had a few parties there. Well, they had a housewarming party, and Billy Idol turned up and all that. So it was quite a fun night.
And you were actually living off doing these gigs?
Or
you working? Do you have a proper job as well?
No, we were all basically borrowing money off our manager and Dave.
Yeah.
And then when we signed to A&M, he got it all back. But he did buy us new instruments, and we were paying rent out of the money. But that was after we got to A&M.
Yeah. Anyway, the big breakthrough, of course, was Where's Captain Kirk? And I read somewhere you wrote it on a bus, is that right?
Well, Soldier Soldier, we had to write for the John Peel session,
right.
for the Spizzenergi John Peel session,
right.
And that was Single of the Week. That came out in time for us to do
to get it sequentially, you're right.
the Rough Trade tour.
So, and then after 6,000 Crazy, Cold City, then Soldier Soldier.
Yeah, and in between of doing the songs for John Peel, Where's Captain Kirk was written in April, and then we did the tour with the Rough Trade tour with Raincoats and Kleenex in May, and that's where we started playing Where's Captain Kirk, and the audience was just going bonkers, frankly. And so that was obviously going to be the next single. And Soldier Soldier had already been released for that tour, and then we saved Kirk for the film. The first Star Trek film was coming out in December, so we saved Kirk for then. But we were playing it up and down the country and realising how it's going to go as a song, and we tweaked it in the mix, and we put it out in December. And I wrote it after rehearsing. We always used to go for a couple of shandies, literally only a couple of beers back then, and then I'd get the bus home, and the tune that we'd played, Mark had brought to the table, was called Nobody's Who, and it had one line in the chorus which is, oh but it's true, and I had that going around my head in the bus, and I just wrote a whole new load of lyrics, oh but it's true, but I didn't have no pen and paper, so I had to sing it over and over in my head, waiting for the bus stop.
You were singing in the bus?
In my head, going, and then the second verse came into my head. Oh, I've got to keep singing it, I'm going to forget it. So I got off the bus, ran home, wrote it down, and the third verse came while I was writing it. So like you were saying about Spizzoil songs, came like that. And then I went back to the rehearsal the following week and said, hey Mark, you know that song, I couldn't understand all the words you wrote and all that, but I've got these other words, see what you think. And Jim on bass, and we played through it, and we all fell about laughing. And then we started playing it on the shows, and it was just, this is it. This is just one of the magic songs that just falls into your lap.
Yeah. It's always the great test, isn't it? Playing something live, how it goes.
I always prefer to play a song even when it's not quite finished, because you can knock it together live.
Yeah.
Hang on, that's better if we did that. And you feel things live, and then you take it back to the studio. See, look, I don't understand how bands write in the studio. I know the Beatles did it and Rolling Stones did it, but I do it the other way around. I like to get it on the stage first and then bring it back into the...
Well, wasn't that kind of the whole thing about the whole punk movement, which you came out of, that spontaneity?
Well, see, interacting with the audience, you're interacting, they're actually helping you write the song, if anything.
Yeah. And then, of course, it got to number one in the newly invented independent chart.
Which you had a help in?
Well, it was my idea originally, yeah.
Well, that's right. Who else was involved? We got involved to get in that? Just a couple of other record label owners?
No, what it was I was friendly with the people that ran a trade magazine called Record Business. It doesn't exist now. And I just had this idea of having an independent chart, because they had all the stats. Something's happened with the lighting.
Who switched the lights on?
Oh, now we've got the lights back again.
Yeah, the lights back on. Well, you switched the lights on for the independent record labels.
Well, could be said that way. So no, what happened was I spoke to some friends at Record Business Trade magazine. They had all the stats, and I said, why don't we do an independent chart? Because, like, for instance, Cherry had put out the Dead Kennedys Holiday in Cambodia.
Big sales figures. It
sold like 90,000 copies.
Right.
It wasn't in the proper chart.
No. Because they were using Woolworths, they were doing WH Smiths, they were using Virgin Records, Superstores, whatever, and they weren't using the grassroots outlets that you were distributing to?
Well, they were using some of them, but of course the major record companies were fiddling the chart.
They knew where the
They
shops.
was going around there, the chart return
Pluggers
shops,
they
saying,
were.
here's a few free copies of this, give us a few ticks on your...
Yeah.
Because it was before, obviously,
Straight
automation.
cash, no cash, just...
I don't know if it was cash, but they were giving them
It's
free
effectively
records.
the same thing, yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, the independent chart started, and the first number one was Where's Captain Kirk? And it stayed there for 7 weeks. And that was 40 years ago.
And had you started the chart at Christmas, it would have been number one for 10 weeks. With cameraman. Because the record music papers were doing their own, like ringing up a record shop in Newcastle, a small, and saying what's your top selling records, and then one week they might ring up Bristol, Birmingham.
No, they had a basic list of about 250 shops, and the shops had paperwork they filled in.
Yeah.
And then the chart compilers would ring them up.
Yeah.
And say what's been selling this week, and they'd read it from this list that they had.
Well, Kirk was already
But it was all
top
a
of
bit...
the chart of the unofficial charts, and then the official charts came out 19th of January 1980.
Yeah. So anyway, and of course we were just looking earlier because this Wizzo
Fabulous magazine,
Electronic Sound,
like what I was in,
has got 4 pages on you. It must be good, mustn't it?
Yeah, photos.
And number 1, of course, Where's Captain Kirk? Number 2, Fiddler's Dram. Number 3, Delta 5. Number 4, Modettes.
Which we toured with twice, Germany and England.
Number 5, Dead Kennedys. Number 6, Joy Division.
What a contrast.
It wasn't that great though?
Yeah.
That's real diversity of music,
Sure.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that was the brilliant thing about the independent music, that it was very diverse. And anything with independent distribution, owned by, and it was an independent owned label, was independent.
It was people doing it for the love more as well.
Yeah.
So you got the connectivity was there, where some of the chart hits of the 70s were just production line cornflakes, wasn't it? So, the pop bands, some of the pop bands would be session musicians, girls or blokes who looked good looking on a photo session, and the chart was full of this stuff, as well as good songs. Obviously, good songs still got into the normal chart, but this is with the disenfranchisation that us young musicians felt in the punk, and why punk did take off.
Yeah. So.
Just thought I'd say that.
No, great. Say what you like, it's your show. So, you obviously like Star Trek.
Yeah.
Did you actually ever meet William Shatner?
Well, no, we actually hatched a plan because we found out he was in the country, and a friend of my bass player knew someone who worked at the airport, and back in those days airport security wasn't like it was, so we were actually we met up on a Sunday of his flight, and we were going to drive to the airport and photobomb him at the airport, but we basically started to think we probably might not work out in the end, so we didn't meet him unofficially or officially. We tried to get an official meeting set up, but the CBS were handling the soundtrack release, and they didn't want some outfit from Rough Trade to come along and make any capital themselves out of it. So we didn't get to do it. But I did get to sign one of my records next to Leonard Nimoy's autograph that this lad had taken to get Leonard Nimoy to sign it, and then I signed next to Leonard. And I went to see Leonard Nimoy at a Comic-Con. Well, I went to a Comic-Con and Leonard Nimoy was there, but it was 25 quid to have a signature and meet him. And I thought, well, I could just wave to him. All right, Leonard. And he waved back, and that's all I needed. But I've got tickets to see William Shatner in March. He's doing this thing at the where he's doing a Q&A, followed by Wrath of Khan at the Hammersmith Apollo Odeon thing.
Okay.
So yeah, I've decided to shell out ridiculous amounts of money to see Bill in person 40 feet away at the Hammersmith Odeon.
And will you be wearing the gear?
Well, I might even, if it looks like I'm never going to get anywhere near him, I might just frisbee him a copy of the record.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
who knows? Watch this space.
Anyway, to whiz through your career.
Yeah.
And of
It's
course,
still to come.
Yeah, lots still to come. The one thing we haven't mentioned so far is you did change the name of the band a lot.
Well, that was an organic thing. It was by accident, really, that became a routine. I started off, as I say, Spizz 77, I was in the Now doing that first show, and I had a paper bag with Spizz 77 written on it. So when I had a photograph taken afterwards, that's what I called myself, Spizz 77.
Yeah.
But that wasn't going to sound or look as good dynamically as a design feature in 78. And now I've met Pete again, and now we're a duo. I thought, well, we're a bit different now. And so when I saw this program about oil rigs, I thought, Spizzoil. It's symmetrical as a design, and we could call Pete Petrol. I just wrote the story itself, and we're doing songs about industry and stuff like that. But then, as I say, we fell out after a year of touring as Spizzoil, and through my girlfriend I met Jim and Mark and another guitarist who we later realised he wasn't right sort of guy, and he was actually the ex-girlfriend of my now girlfriend. And so they came round and we did a jam session, and Jim, bass player, and Mark Caulfield, keyboard player, they got me. So I thought, this is a new band, it's a slightly different sound, keyboards, bass, we hadn't found a drummer yet. So oil produces energy, so I changed the name to Spizzenergi, because I didn't want people to think they're seeing the same thing. Different band now.
Okay.
So Spizzenergi ran its course. We had 7 guitarists, 5 drummers, so there is no original lineup. And we started to feel we got a settled lineup at the end of 1979. And then Paul Morley rings me up at Christmas and says, what's the new name, Spizz? You know, you change your name every year, don't you? So, well, we had been thinking about it, but we hadn't decided yet. But the Olympic Games was coming up, the Moscow Olympic Games. So we thought, well, let's support those athletes, because those athletes were under pressure from Thatcher and Reagan to not go to the Moscow Olympics. And we felt a way of supporting the athletes would call ourselves Athletico Spizz 80, and that's why we had the runner on the logos of everything. And so we changed our name again. And it just kept going on. It wasn't a plan. It just kept happening. So then Dave Woods thought we were going to be as big as his favourite band, the Beatles. They said, let's call yourselves the Spizzles. So that sort of foisted upon us. And when we got rid of that name, we went back to Rough Trade after we left A&M. And we thought, let's go. So it's like a sequel, Spizzenergi 2. Pete Petrol's in the band, Jim, Mark. And we got a great guitarist and a great drummer. The drummer of Where's Captain Kirk and Soldier, he was in the band, the live band now, so Spizzenergi 2.
But you skipped,
and then we changed again. What?
You skipped over an important thing.
What's that?
That you left Rough Trade to go to A&M, who were, in theory, independent, were a much bigger, obviously,
well, they were considered
company.
formed by musicians who wanted to care for musicians.
No.
Herb Albert and the other chap.
Yeah, Jerry Moss. Yeah.
A&M.
So, what was the thinking behind that move from going?
Well, we were touring and we were all living in London, all having to pay rent, and we were costing our manager lots of money. We had to sign. We needed money. We couldn't get enough money. We couldn't get enough money from our current structure. And we'd recorded the album initially to take it anywhere. Rough Trade would be the first choice. But by then, bigger major labels were getting a bit desperate. They were running out of people they could sign. They'd already signed Adamant and Killing Joke, and there was not many people left to pick up.
Not a very good advert for yourself.
No, it wasn't. No, we were the last ones. We were the last ones to bite the cherry. Yeah. So that's it. We signed.
So you got a big advance.
So we got a fairly chunky advance. Paid off Dave Woods. Started to have money to buy new equipment, and back on the road again. And so we launched the album on A&M.
Which was Do a Runner, wasn't it?
Do a Runner, and it went in the top 20 for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, so you had a chart album, a real chart album.
Yeah, in the proper charts. Well, it was just another chart. Really.
So did you think this was it?
So we've
arrived.
Well, we got music interviews in the music papers were easily found. People, you suddenly found yourself doing interviews at the drop of a hat, whereas before hardly anyone came to you, apart from the fanzines, which I always gave a lot of time to. And then we started making a video. We made a video which never got used. So that was a story of my life. Yeah. So we were on a major label, but then we fell out over the financing of with the guy in charge of videos, and he had a row and he took it upstairs, and then we got dropped. So we went back to Rough Trade, who happily welcomed us into their bosom.
Of course, yeah. And by then you were Spizzles, is that right?
No, now we're Spizzenergi 2, rebranded again.
So I've got the sequence wrong again.
No, so 81 is when we got dropped by A&M. But by the time we
says in my notes, it says you went, Athletico Spizz was 80, Then in
Spizzles 81.
Spizzles was 81.
And then back to Rough Trade 82.
Was
we
okay.
Spizzenergi 2.
Yeah, okay. And yeah, he was still releasing singles, and they were selling okay.
There was Wilderness Years. 83 was only one show. I did only one show in 1983.
And then, according to what I picked off the internet, which may or may not be true, you might want to comment.
Yeah.
You were playing guitar with Heaven 17.
Well, that was because I was friends with Martin Ware and
Yes.
hung out with them when they were in the Humour League on tour with Suzie. But then when we all moved to London, we ended up being a couple of streets away from each other. So we used to go out and drinking and playing cards late at night and watching telly. And Glenn had a dodgy knee, so he wasn't moving around so much. Ian Craig Marsh was behind a keyboard, Martin was behind a keyboard. They just got a hit coming up, the Temptation, and they were just going to go to European pop shows and look a bit static. They wanted someone a bit lively. So Spizz.
We couldn't call you static, could we?
So they gave me a quick audition. Can you do this song? So I could bluff it, yeah, because it's all miming.
Because you were miming on stage.
Yeah, on TV.
Yeah.
So I went to do Italy twice, Germany, Belgium, Spain. I did about 7-8 pop TV shows, miming and getting session rates.
So did you ever do real gigs miming with them?
No, this is just TV.
Okay.
Pop shows, so I can look.
So that's kind of allowed, isn't it?
Sexy rock and roller on stage,
Yeah.
making Heaven 17 a bit more zizzy
Yeah.
for the European market.
Okay.
While they had to go and do the interviews, I sat by the pool drinking cocktails. I was like in the Wham Tropicana video, you know. They had to go and do work, and I was just waiting for the TV show in the evening.
And then in '83, I hope I got this all right, Spizzorwell. Was that
Yes,
right?
well, I was thinking ahead of 1984. I was thinking, well, always trying to be ahead of the game. I thought Spizzorwell in 1983, see?
Yeah, very clever, yeah.
Clever, but didn't work.
Yeah.
Went whoosh over people's ends, you see.
And you had a dark cabaret, apparently.
And then I turned into a backing track show because I was fed up of having to pay for drum skins and guitar strings. So I thought, let's do it all on tape and do it with live singing with my backing dark cabaret, yes, as you call it, yes.
But, you know, you kept yourself going because the following year, '85, you were Spizz and the Astronauties.
Well, Spizz and the Astronauties was 84, and 85.
Okay.
The same lineup bled into 1985, where I thought things were going well. So I saw this Laurel and Hardy film where they open a shop and they put in the sign "Open for Big Business." So I called myself Spizz's Big Business in '85.
Okay.
I had no care. There was no filter between me and my audience. I came up with a name and I went with it. There was no one to say that's not really a good name.
And how were you in yourself? You were obviously enjoying yourself to an extent, but were you feeling that your peak was kind of over?
Well, you always think if this show hasn't got as many people as the last show that you've had it. But as someone cruelly pointed out in one music review, if I had to perform only for four people in a room, I would probably still do it.
Yeah.
Because that was what I was about.
Yeah.
Oh, the audiences have grown again. So sometimes you have winter, sometimes you have spring.
Yeah.
Sometimes the tide comes in, and sometimes the tide goes out. But it might come back in again.
And Spizzsexual?
Well, that was because I was just a lot of my stuff, I'm just reflecting what's happening. And Madonna was wearing next to nothing in all her pop videos. Prince was running around with lots of girls on his pop videos, and Michael Jackson was always jumping around holding his trousers. So I thought, Spizzsexual. And it was partly my bass player at the time. He said, "You got to spizz it up a bit." And so he liked the idea of Spizzsexual. So we became Spizzsexual, and we weren't really sexy. We just had a couple of shows where we had some dancers that came on and sang with me for a couple of songs. They wanted to be in my band. I didn't say you must do this. They were willing to do what they did, which was wear underwear really on stage. And
didn't you kind of go down badly at the Blackpool Rebellion Festival because you had dancers on stage?
No. We did. They were backing singers,
They were backing singers, not dancers.
Not
okay.
exotic dancers. No, they
Yeah.
were proper backing singers.
Okay.
It wasn't. No, it was a good show. We did. I've seen the video. We didn't make fools of ourselves. I think when I fell over near the end of one of the songs, but we got into trouble with the promoter because we did a warm-up show in London, but had Blackpool 5 hours. Surely it's okay to do a show a week and 500 miles apart.
Absolutely. So I've got lots of other notes here of things you've done since then, but let's just sort of pick out the highlights. You made a couple of football-related records.
Well, yes, thank you to Cherry Red because
One about some dodgy Midlands team called Aston Villa.
Well, you had this idea of producing records, of compilation of all the songs, because lots of clubs have songs, songs made by them, the club teams sometimes, and some made by the supporters. Yeah. And when it came to the Aston Villa one, you said, "Have you got a Villa song?" I said, "Well, of course I have," which I hadn't. He said, "What?" You said, "What's the title?" And I said, "It's called The Sun Never Sets on Aston Villa." And then about a week before,
you went on the bus and you wrote the song.
A week before, I got the phone call saying, you've got the song ready, Spizz? I said, yeah, hang on a minute. So I rang up with bass player and guitarist. We wrote the song in the evening and booked the studio for the next day and recorded it in a day and mixed it and then delivered it. So that was another case. Yeah, it's also fine. The song that won a poll. When Randy Lerner joined the club as a chairman, he got one of his lieutenants to go and find out what people think the song should be for the football team to run out on the pitch. And several fanzine websites ran a poll, which The Sun Never Sets on Aston Villa won by a narrow margin, by 3%. It won the supporters' choice to be the song which I wrote it for, to be the song that the team went out on, and they still haven't used it.
Yeah, well, maybe if they use it, they might start winning some more games. So,
it's a great record. Actually,
it is a good record. I think all your records are good records. So just to sort of finish off, there was a docu-movie made, The Road to Wakefield Pier, was that right?
It was a dear friend of ours, Phil Calland, who lives up there, and he thought it'd be a great idea to film us live and do interviews backstage, and we called it The Road to Wakefield Pier, based on the idea that it sounded a bit like The Road to Wigan Pier, which is a George Orwell book which ties into the B-side of Where's Captain Kirk's Amnesia is a 1984 based lyric, and hence the opening line is, "Oh listen Winston, you don't have to suffer." He's in the torture chamber in Amnesia. How many fingers on my hand, Winston? So I'm a big fan of George Orwell.
Okay, and what's Spizz actually doing now?
Well, I've got my radio show, as I mentioned at the top of the interview, Spizz FM, which is my audio autobiography, which is why I'm able to conjure up all these memories for you, because I've been doing them on my radio show as well, which is on Resonance 104.4 FM. I've hooked up with a new management team, Andrew, and he's getting some more action for us. We're going, because last year 2019 should have been the 40th anniversary proper of Spizzzenergi, because the Soldier came out, Where's Captain Kirk? But we had to sort of slide it across to the independent chart and regroup and start again. So we're starting, the anniversary year is this year now, 2020, which also includes Athletico Spizz 80, which was quite a peak as well.
Yeah. So you're still having fun doing it, which is the main thing.
Well, it's I'm only really happy when I'm on stage.
Yeah.
It's all the mess on either side I can't bear. But when I'm walking onto that stage, I am free.
Yeah, and you've been on the kind of stage for the last 45 minutes with me as well.
Thank you.
You've been performing and you've done a good job.
Well,
it's interesting.
This is the core. This is the core, Spizz core.
And I think for me, it's people like you that keep that whole. Maybe you were never actually a punk act as such, but you kept the spirit of punk going, which was
the spirit of punk. We don't sound like a punk band anymore.
No, but you have a spirit insofar as you keep going and you are
DIY.
Yourselves.
Yeah.
And you haven't fallen into all the big traps. And
the Ferrari's not in the driveway. I haven't got a Ferrari. I haven't got a helicopter. These things I should have had, but I haven't. No.
Yeah. Okay. Spizz, thanks for coming in,
Okay.
talking to me, and I shall come and see you live again soon, because it's been a few years since I've seen you live, so there needs to be a gig not too far from London, and we'll all come along.
Well, we will. We are planning some new stuff. The next one is actually in Liverpool, so you've probably given that on a swerve on March the 15th. But I'm sure there'll be a London show before the summer.
Okay, great. Thanks again, and thanks everyone for watching Cherry Red TV, and I hope we see you again soon. Goodbye.